Sam had never felt more alone. After his mother's passing, he decided to leave behind the memories of his childhood home and move into a new house on the outskirts of town. It was old but affordable, with creaky wooden floors and a strange stillness that made the air feel heavy. The house stood in isolation, surrounded by overgrown trees and an empty road that stretched into the distance. There weren't many neighbors, just silence and the occasional sound of wind rustling through the trees. At night, the darkness felt deeper, almost suffocating, as if the house was swallowed by the emptiness around it. I had never felt more alone. After my mother's passing, I couldn't bear to stay in our old house, surrounded by memories that felt too heavy to carry. So, I moved. The new house was on the outskirts of town, old, worn, and eerily quiet. There weren't many neighbors, just a stretch of empty road and trees that loomed over the property like silent watchers. The first night, as I sat among unpacked boxes, I realized how deep the silence was. No distant chatter, no cars passing by, just the occasional creak of the wooden floors and the whisper of wind through the trees. It felt as if the house was swallowed by the emptiness around it. My mother was all I ever had. My father died in a car accident when I was just 5 years old, too young to fully understand what loss meant. But I grew up with the weight of his absence, watching my mother struggle to raise me on her own. She was my world, my protector, my home. Now, with her gone, I felt like I had no one. Every corner of this new house, every quiet moment, brought back memories of her. The way she used to hum while cooking, the warmth of her hugs, the sound of her laughter, things I would never experience again. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself this move was for the best. But as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, a strange unease settled over me. The house felt too still, too empty. Or maybe, not empty at all. A few days passed, and I tried to settle into my new home, but the emptiness never left me. Every night, the silence felt heavier, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. Then, one night, just past midnight, I heard it. They were soft at first, a faint creaking from downstairs, like someone carefully stepping on the old wooden floorboards. My heart pounded as I held my breath, straining to listen. Maybe it was just the house settling, I told myself. Old places made noises. But then I heard it again. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving across the living room. I sat up in bed, my body frozen in place. I lived alone. No one else should be here. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a single step on the staircase. Something was coming up. My hands were shaking as I slid out of bed. Every instinct told me to stay put, but I had to know. I had to see. Slowly, I crept toward the staircase, my bare feet barely making a sound against the wooden floor. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I swallowed hard and took the first step down, then another. When I reached the bottom, I stood still, listening. The living room was exactly as I had left it. No open doors, no signs of movement, just the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. I took a cautious step forward. The old wooden planks groaned beneath my weight, but there was no other sound. No footsteps, no intruder, just an eerie, unnatural calm that sent a chill down my spine. Had I imagined it? Was my mind playing tricks on me? I let out a shaky breath and turned to head back upstairs. I sighed, shaking my head. Maybe I was just exhausted. Grief and stress could do strange things to the mind. Slowly, I made my way back upstairs, forcing myself to push aside the unease creeping up my spine. Once I was back in my room, I shut the door behind me and crawled into bed. The silence felt heavier now, but I told myself it was just my imagination. There was nothing there, nothing at all. I closed my eyes and, despite the lingering tension in my chest, eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I decided to clean up the backyard. The place had been neglected for years, with overgrown weeds and dead leaves covering most of the ground. The fresh air and sunlight felt like a relief after the strange unease of the previous night. As I raked away the dried leaves, something caught my eye. My blood ran cold. I froze, gripping the rake tightly as I stared at the window. The figure was faint, almost like a shadow, standing motionless just behind the glass. It was too dark to make out any details, but I could feel it staring back at me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. My stomach twisted as I dropped the rake and ran inside. Taking the stairs 2 at a time, I reached my bedroom and pushed the door open, my heart hammering in my chest. Nothing. The room was empty. The bed, the furniture, everything was exactly as I had left it. The window was closed, but the unease lingered, because deep down, I knew, I wasn't alone. That night, despite everything, I forced myself to sleep. I told myself it was just stress, just my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down, a part of me knew something was wrong with this house. Sometime past midnight, I was jolted awake by a loud crash from downstairs. The sharp sound of glass shattering echoed through the house. My heart pounded as I sat up, trying to shake off the haze of sleep. Then I sighed, forcing a nervous chuckle. Of course, it had to be my cat. Ever since moving in, she had been restless, darting from room to room like she sensed something I couldn't. Maybe she knocked over a glass or something. Still, I had to check. Rubbing my eyes, I got out of bed and made my way downstairs. The air felt colder than usual, sending a shiver through me. As I reached the living room, I scanned the area, looking for my cat or the source of the noise. Then, my eyes landed on the shattered glass. A framed picture had fallen from the wall, the glass splintered across the wooden floor. But when I looked closer, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just any picture. It was a photo of my mother. And the way it had fallen, it almost looked like someone had ripped it off the wall. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. It had to be a coincidence. Maybe the nail holding the frame was loose. Maybe it was just gravity. I grabbed a dustpan and carefully swept up the shards of glass, making sure not to cut myself. My hands were still trembling as I picked up the broken frame and set it aside. Once everything was cleaned up, I let out a tired sigh and made my way back upstairs. I just wanted to sleep and forget about all of this. As I pushed open my bedroom door, my heart slowed a little when I saw my cat curled up on my bed. She was calm, her small body rising and falling with each breath. She didn't look like she had just caused a mess downstairs. I hesitated for a moment, then climbed into bed beside her. She barely stirred, only flicking her tail as I pulled the blanket over myself. As I reached out to pet my cat, something felt off. Her body was too still, her breathing too shallow. The moment my fingers brushed her fur, she lunged at me. Her mouth twisted open unnaturally wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Her eyes were hollow, black voids staring straight into me. She let out a horrible, guttural screech as she launched herself at my face. I screamed, falling back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Then, I jolted awake. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sat up, drenched in sweat. My room was dark, eerily silent. My cat was curled up beside me, completely normal, her soft purring the only sound in the room. I ran a shaking hand over my face. Just a dream, but it had felt so real, too real. As I tried to calm myself down, a strange feeling crept over me. Something wasn't right. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted. The nightmare still lingered in my mind, but I tried to shake it off. Just a dream, I told myself. Nothing more. I got out of bed and stretched before heading downstairs. The house was eerily quiet, the air heavy with an unsettling stillness. I hadn't seen my cat since waking up, but that wasn't unusual. She liked to wander outside sometimes. As I stepped into the backyard, the cool morning breeze brushed against my skin. But then, I saw it, lying in the grass near the back fence. My breath caught in my throat as I took slow, hesitant steps toward her. The closer I got, the worse the sight became. Her body was rotting, fur matted, skin peeling, an unbearable stench filling the air. I staggered back, my stomach twisting. This wasn't normal. She had been fine last night. She had been alive in my bed. And yet, here she was decayed, as if she had been dead for days. A cold chill ran down my spine. Something was terribly wrong with this house. I felt a deep, hollow sadness as I dug a small grave in the backyard. My cat had been my only companion in this empty house, and now she was gone. I didn't understand how she had died, how she had rotted so quickly, but I couldn't bear to think about it any longer. With a heavy heart, I buried her beneath the old oak tree, whispering a quiet goodbye before covering her body with soil. That night, I tried to distract myself. I sat in the living room, watching TV with the volume low, the flickering light casting faint shadows on the walls. The house was silent, apart from the occasional creak of the old wooden floor. But then, I felt it. A presence. A shifting movement in my peripheral vision. It came from behind me, near the kitchen area. My breath caught in my throat. The air felt colder. My skin prickled with an eerie sensation, like unseen eyes were locked onto me. Slowly, I turned my head toward the dark kitchen. Nothing, just empty space. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it grew stronger. A shiver ran down my spine as I turned my attention back to the TV, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up my neck. But something wasn't right. The room felt colder, heavier, like the air itself had shifted. My eyes flicked toward the kitchen again, drawn by an unsettling urge. Slowly, I stood up and walked over, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. The kitchen was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lamp outside. Then, as I glanced out the window, a figure stood in my backyard, tall, motionless, their face obscured by shadows. But what made my blood run cold was the knife clutched in their hand. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but then they took a step closer. My breath caught in my throat as the figure took another step forward. My body finally snapped into action. Rushing to the kitchen door, I twisted the lock with trembling hands, making sure it was secure. The doorknob twisted aggressively, but the lock held. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I scrambled backward, looking around for something, anything, to defend myself. My mind raced. I had locked the kitchen door. How the hell had they gotten inside? The door frame cracked slightly. They were hitting it harder now. I had to do something, now. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The ringing felt like it lasted forever. My heart pounded as the door shook violently with every slam. Any second now, it could break open. 911, what's your emergency? I barely found my voice. Someone's in my house, they're trying to break down my bedroom door. Please, send help. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Do you have any way to defend yourself? I looked around desperately. I don't know. I locked the door, but they're breaking it. A sharp splintering sound rang out as the wood began to give way. They were almost in. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Officers are 3 minutes away. 3 minutes. That felt like a lifetime. Then sudden silence. The banging stopped. The house went dead quiet. I held my breath. Were they still there? Then I heard it. The sound of footsteps walking away. A minute passed. Then another. Then sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through my window as police cars screeched to a stop outside. I stumbled to my feet as I heard officers shouting downstairs. They were here. I was safe. Or so I thought. I hesitated for a moment, my ear pressed against the door, listening. The house was silent now except for the distant voices of the police downstairs. Slowly, I unlocked the door and stepped out. My legs felt weak as I made my way down the staircase, gripping the railing tightly. The moment I reached the living room, I saw them, 2 officers standing by the front door, their flashlights scanning the area. One of them turned to me. Are you the one who called? He asked. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. Yeah, they were trying to break into my room. Did you find them? The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. We didn't, but we saw someone running through the backyard when we arrived. They must have taken off as soon as they saw the lights. A chill ran through me. Whoever it was, they had been inside my house. They had tried to break into my room. And now, they were out there somewhere, watching, waiting. The other officer stepped forward. We're going to check the property. Do you have anywhere else you can stay tonight? I swallowed hard, glancing around the dimly lit house. Did I really want to stay here anymore? The officers began their search, carefully moving through each room with their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I stood in the corner, anxiety gnawing at me as I watched them comb through the house. I had thought that whoever had been trying to break in was just some intruder, but now, the whole situation felt different. Then, one of the officers called out from the basement. Hey, you need to see this. I rushed toward the stairs, my heart racing again. They had found something. I reached the bottom of the stairs and saw the officer pointing at the wall. It was hidden behind a set of old shelves, nearly impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. The officer ran his hand along the wall, revealing a small doorway, barely big enough to fit through. This wasn't here before, the officer muttered as he pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down even further. I followed him, my feet heavy, dread settling in my chest. The staircase creaked with every step we took, and the smell down here was stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. At the bottom, we found a small room. It was dark, but the flashlights illuminated the contents. Old furniture, a makeshift bed, food wrappers, and what caught my eye, a series of photographs. Photographs of me. The walls were covered with pictures of me, taken at different times of the day, from different angles, some blurry, some clear. The worst part was, some of them were taken when I was at home, in my own room. I could feel my pulse quicken as the officer walked toward a desk, his flashlight illuminating more. There were notes pinned to the wall, scribbled with strange, almost frantic writing. "He's watching, he's close, almost there. Looks like someone was living here in secret," the officer said, his voice low. "They were spying on you, watching your every move." My stomach churned. I felt the blood drain from my face as it hit me. The figure in the backyard, the odd feeling that had followed me. Someone had been in this house all along. As the officer continued to sift through the eerie, hidden room, I stood frozen in place, my mind racing. How had someone been living here without me noticing? How long had they been watching me, following my every step? The officer turned to me, his face grim. "This is strange, Sam. We'll investigate further, but it looks like whoever was here was watching you for a long time." My heart hammered in my chest as I glanced back at the photographs. One caught my eye, a recent one. It was taken just last night, through the window of my bedroom. The same window I had stared out of in fear earlier. I took a step back, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. But who was this person? Who had been living here, hiding in the shadows, and what did they want from me? I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come, and the question that lingered in my mind, as the door to that hidden room creaked softly behind me, was I ever truly alone?
I've always been fascinated by old, abandoned houses. There's something about them that feels mysterious, as if they hold secrets just waiting to be uncovered. But there's one house I'll never forget, a house that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. This story takes place in a small, quiet village, surrounded by thick forests and misty hills. At the edge of this village, hidden behind overgrown trees and thorny bushes, stood an old, abandoned house. The villagers called it the cursed house. They said strange things happened there, things no one could explain. But no one knew the real story until Emma and Mark moved in. Emma and Mark were a young couple who had recently lost their parents in a tragic accident. Heartbroken and looking for a fresh start, they stumbled upon the old house. It was cheap, and though it looked eerie, they thought they could turn it into a home. The villagers warned them not to go, shaking their heads and whispering among themselves. But Emma and Mark didn't believe in ghosts. "Ghosts aren't real," they said with a laugh. Little did they know, they were about to discover something far more terrifying. The first few days in the house were peaceful. Emma and Mark cleaned the dusty rooms, painted the cracked walls, and even planted flowers in the overgrown garden. But soon, strange things began to happen. At night, they would hear footsteps in the hallway, even though no one was there. Doors would creak open and slam shut by themselves. And sometimes they would hear voices, soft, whispering voices that sounded like their parents. One night, Emma was in the kitchen making tea when she heard her mother's voice. "Emma, dear, are you okay?" it said. Emma froze. The voice was so clear, so real. She turned around, but no one was there. Her heart raced as she called out to Mark. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Mark shook his head, dismissing it as her imagination. But deep down, Emma knew something wasn't right. The next night, Mark heard his father's voice. "Mark, son, you need to be careful," it said. Mark's blood ran cold. He looked around the room, but it was empty. He tried to brush it off, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the days went by, the voices became more frequent. Emma and Mark would hear their parents talking to them, giving them advice, even scolding them like they used to. At first, it was comforting, like having their parents back. But soon, it became terrifying. The voices were too real, too close. They would hear them in the middle of the night, whispering from the corners of the room. "We're here for you," the voices would say. "We'll never leave you." One evening, Emma and Mark were sitting in the living room when they heard a loud knock on the door. They opened it, but no one was there. As they turned to go back inside, they heard their parents' voices again, this time coming from upstairs. "Emma, Mark, come here," the voices said. "We need to talk to you." Emma and Mark looked at each other, their hearts pounding. They didn't want to go upstairs, but something pulled them forward. They climbed the stairs slowly, their footsteps echoing in the silent house. When they reached the top, they saw two figures standing at the end of the hallway. The figures looked like their parents, but their faces were pale, their eyes empty. "Stay with us," the figure said. "We are your parents now." Emma and Mark screamed and ran back downstairs. They locked themselves in the bedroom, but the voices followed them. "You can't run away," the voices said. "We will always be here." The next day, Emma and Mark decided to find out the truth about the house. They went to the village library and searched through old records. After hours of digging, they found a newspaper article from 50 years ago. The headline read, "Family dies in tragic fire." The article said that a couple and their 2 children had lived in the house. One night, a fire broke out and the entire family died. But the article also mentioned something strange. The parents had been accused of keeping their children locked in the house, never letting them leave. Emma and Mark were horrified. They realized that the voices they had been hearing weren't their parents. They were the ghosts of the couple who had lived in the house. The couple had lost their children and couldn't move on. They had been waiting for new children to take care of. That night, Emma and Mark decided to leave the house. They packed their bags and ran to the door, but as they reached for the handle, they heard the voices again, louder this time. "Don't leave us," the voices said. "We are your parents now." The door wouldn't open. No matter how hard they tried, it was stuck. They turned around and saw the 2 figures standing in the hallway. They looked like their parents, but their faces were twisted with anger. The figures reached out their hands and said, "You belong to us now." Emma and Mark screamed, but no one heard them. The villagers never saw them again. The house remained empty, but sometimes, on quiet nights, you can hear voices coming from inside, soft, whispering voices that sound like parents calling their children. And if you ever walk past the house, don't stop. Don't listen, because if you do, you might hear them calling your name too. And once they have you, they'll never let you go. The parents who never left are always waiting, always watching, always looking for new children to take care of. Forever. So, the next time you see an old, abandoned house, remember this story. And whatever you do, don't go inside, because you never know who or what might be waiting for you.